I know that another call is coming today. I don't know when and I don't know why, but it will. They have been the only constant in the chaotic maelstrom of decision and consequence that has been the last few weeks of my life. Oddly reassuring knowing that I can look forward to them, yet completely powerless to know exactly when they will occur, or more importantly, what I should do about them. Any doubt is gone, and I've seen too many things to believe it is just some trick or coincidence. I don't want to believe, but I have to now. I know that I have a responsibility to do something. I just don't know what that is most of the time. I am tired and overwhelmed, but someone has to do something, and that someone is me. I was chosen to know what will happen and given the burden of stopping it, or just bearing witness. I suppose I understand how ignorance can be bliss now. Sorry, I should elaborate and tell you what has been happening to me these last few weeks. I know that it might sound crazy, but bear with me. The first call was 2 weeks ago. I was just getting off work and I had to take care of something that was equal parts annoying and expensive. I needed to pick up a new phone since I managed to completely break my old Galaxy by dropping it the day before. The screen shattered, of course, but worse, some damage to the internal components completely broke it, and it wouldn't boot up or do anything other than display a blank screen. As I was about to head out to purchase my new device, the seemingly dead phone sprang to life and started ringing. Not with my own ringtone, but a strange chime that I hadn't heard before, and wasn't sure if it was even in the list of pre-programmed ringtones. I was confused how it could still ring, but was momentarily relieved since I figured that it might still work after all. I couldn't really afford anything better at the moment anyway, so if I could, I would save on the expense. Putting aside the decision to keep my shattered phone a while longer or not, I answered the call. I was surprised and disturbed when before I could even say hello, a panic-stricken voice cut me off.
What do you mean? I did call 911. I need help. Somebody stole our car and stabbed my boyfriend, Michael. We need help. Get a real dispatcher or something, please. He's losing so much blood. We need help now. We're near the park on, what was it?
She paused, likely confirming the address.
We are on 4th Ave and Beckett Street, I think. Please send help.
I didn't know what I could do. I had tried to suggest they call 911, but they sounded sure that they had. I didn't know how to tell the panicked woman that I couldn't help. I finally decided on a plan and I told her, "All right, ma'am, try and stay calm. I'll try and call emergency services myself and send them there. Please try and call 911 again over there and see if it directs you correctly so that somebody can help. What can I tell them your name is?" There was a pause and the voice on the other line spoke again.
It's Kendra. Kendra what?
Static interrupted her response, and after a moment, the line went dead. I tried to call 911, but after the call, my dead phone had died once again and it was unable to make even an emergency call. I hoped that whoever that Kendra woman was got a hold of emergency services. I had no idea how I had gotten the call, but either way, they really needed help and I was sure not an EMT. I thought that they likely got through since I did not get another call, but the more I thought about it, the more concerned and responsible I felt. I considered the location she gave. I knew that park. It wasn't too far from where I was, so I figured that I would go and check and make sure that they got through to 911, and somebody was there on the scene to help. I drove out to the park and found the corner of the park by 4th and Beckett. Not many people were around since it was fairly late in the evening. Certainly no signs of a stabbing or a carjacking on the street corner. Since nobody was around, I started thinking that maybe I had been the victim of a prank and that nobody was here. It might have just been some elaborate crank call meant to rile people up about emergencies for some kind of sick entertainment. I felt upset by being fooled, but I also realized that nobody was really in trouble and I decided to head home. The Verizon store was closed by that point, so I would have to try again tomorrow. I stuffed the Verizon coupon that I had saved and hoped that it would help discount a new phone for me back into my pocket. Having scribbled the address that Kendra had given me on the back of the paper, I started to feel silly for having gone out there. The next evening after work, I was planning to go buy the overpriced replacement for my phone again. As I got into my car to leave, I fumbled in my pocket for the coupon that I had received and had written the address from the prank call the day before. It wasn't there. My heart sank. It was a coupon for $100 off on a new Galaxy phone, which, considering how much they cost, wasn't a huge percentage, and I would have to finance it anyway. But still, $100 was $100. I still had a while before the store closed, so I decided to check back by the park. I thought maybe that I may have dropped it there when I had gotten out to look for the so-called crime scene. It was a dumb idea, I knew that. I figured that unless somebody was going to buy a phone, they might not have picked it up and it could still be there. I drove back to where I had been the previous night. There were more people around this time. A few joggers, some bike riders, and people walking the trail. I parked and got out of my car and started looking near where I had been standing the night before. The whole idea was stupid, but if it could save me a bit of money, then I would go for it. As expected, after fumbling around for a few minutes, I couldn't find the paper anywhere, and I started heading back to my car. I saw a young couple walking hand in hand back to the parking lot as well. They had arrived back at their car and the gentleman opened the door for his lady. I thought that the gesture was very sweet, which made the next few moments even more horrifying. As he closed the door and started to the driver's side, a figure dressed in all black jumped out of the nearby bushes and shouted at the man. I couldn't make out the words from where I was, but he was holding something, and when the gentleman reached into his pocket, the figure in black lunged forward and attacked. He seemed to stab the gentleman several times, and I heard a scream from the woman who had just emerged from their car. She was still screaming and rushed towards the fallen man, and I thought that I had heard her shout, "Michael, no!" I stood there frozen and unable to act. I knew that I should help, but I was paralyzed by the sudden brutality and horror of the situation. Before I could move, the man in black peeled out of the parking lot in the couple's car. They remained where they were. Her screaming continued and she held on to him. The sound had finally snapped me out of my confused and terrified daze, and I raced over to try and help. As soon as I had approached, the woman looked up at me. Her hands were covered in the man's blood and she begged for help. "Help! Call 911, he's been stabbed. My Michael has been stabbed." I fell back in confused shock. The voice was familiar and the name was too. That was the woman from the phone call yesterday. It sounded exactly like her. There was no mistaking it. I couldn't understand how it was all happening at that moment. My confused reverie was interrupted by the woman shouting me back to my senses. "Don't just stand there, please, we need help." I didn't know how to respond, but I managed to stutter out a meek, My phone's broken. I'm so sorry, maybe I can find help." As I backed away trying to figure out what to do, a jogger had happened by and raced over to help. She sat down with them and was assisting in stabilizing Michael. She had given her cell phone to the woman who seemed to be calling 911. As she finished dialing the number, I felt an odd tingling in the air, and suddenly, my broken phone vibrated and a notification bell chimed. I sat there dumbly watching everything unfold in disbelief. After a brief delay, I heard her speak, and I wasn't prepared, though perhaps I should have been for what happened next. "Help! Oh God, please help, somebody stabbed him. They stabbed Michael, please send help." I felt an odd thrumming of electrical energy from the phone as she spoke, and I knew what she was going to say next. "What do you mean? I did call 911, I need help. Somebody stole our car and stabbed my boyfriend Michael. We need help now. Get a real dispatcher or something, please. He's losing so much blood, we need help now. We're near the park on, what was it?" I unconsciously mouthed the words that followed since I had heard them less than 24 hours before. "We are on 4th Avenue and Beckett Street, I think. Please send help." Another brief pause and then she would say her name. The buzzing and thrumming from the phone stopped moments after she had said her name. "It's Kendra Wallace. Hello, is anybody there? Please send somebody who's going to bleed to death. Please." She continued screaming into the phone and then went back to Michael's prone form while the jogger who had come to help attempted to call emergency services again. It sounded like she had gotten through and was giving the location to someone on the phone. When an ambulance arrived, I left the scene. I couldn't handle the insanity of what I had just experienced. How in the hell did I get a phone call about all of the things that had happened that night the day before? I fell into my car and gripped the wheel and tried to process the insanity of what had just happened. I had no idea how any of this was possible. As I tried to keep from hyperventilating, I heard another notification on my phone. I had received a text message somehow. Despite the messenger app not functioning, it had a message screen displayed with one unread message. I tried to see if any other apps or anything would work and it wouldn't navigate to anything else. The only thing that I could do was open the thread. It left me even more confused than I had been before the message. It read, "Come on, were you even trying? Better luck next time. See you around. M." I had so many questions. Chief among them was, who the hell was M? And how did they know about what had happened? Before I had time to consider the madness of the situation, my phone started to ring again with that same weird chime from yesterday. I had a feeling I knew what would happen if I picked it up. Holding my breath and steeling myself, I answered the call. Placing the phone to my ear and not knowing for certain what to expect, I managed out a meek, "Hello?" A voice on the other end responded, and they sounded very young, likely a child.
Hello, is this 911? We need help. We got in a big car accident and Mommy and Daddy aren't moving. I think they're really hurt. Please help.
My heart sank and I started to panic. I didn't know if this was really happening or if it was going to happen like the other call. Whatever the case, the kids' parents were seriously injured or worse. I couldn't exactly call 911 myself and tell them that something bad somewhere was going to happen. I resolved to get as much information from the terrified child on the phone as possible. Maybe then I could do something about it, whatever that might be. I heard crying on the line and I spoke slowly and clearly to try and reassure the poor thing that help would arrive, just not in the way that she likely expected. "Okay, I know this is scary, but I promise that I'm going to try and help. What is your name and your parents' names?" The crying abated slightly and the trembling reply was,
Chloe, my name is Chloe. My parents are Richard and Abigail.
"Okay, that's great, Chloe, thank you, and what's your last name?"
It's Keller.
I was grateful that she was old enough to know their family surname. "Thank you, Chloe. Can you tell me what happened? How did your mommy and daddy get hurt? What happened with the car accident? Did your car hit something, or did somebody hit your family's car?"
We were just driving down the road and we were waiting at a red light, and as soon as it turned green and we started going again, a silver car hit us on the side and knocked our car over and it sped off.
I heard more crying and I tried to speed up the questioning without pressuring her. I didn't know how long I had. "Do you know what type of car your family has? What color the car is and what the brand name on the back is?" There was brief hesitation and then she spoke again.
It's a red car. I think the label says it's a toy something. Toy Ta? I don't know anything else. That's just what the label says.
A red Toyota was something to go on at least, though I had wished I had the model as well. I didn't bother asking for the plate number. I doubted she would know or be able to check that. "Alright, thank you, Chloe. You're being so brave. Now, can you see where you're at? Are you able to see any road signs to help find where you and your family are?" I hoped that she was able to see something to help find them. I had a terrible feeling that if this was somewhere rural, I might not be able to find wherever it was happening.
I think I see a sign. I can't get out of the car. I'm stuck. And it's getting hard to see. There's smoke everywhere. I think I can see a sign by the light that we were passing. It says or Bishop or something. I can't tell from here. Please, it's getting hard to breathe in here.
I was dreading the implication of what she had said last. If there was a fire and she was stuck in that vehicle and nobody was around to help, she wouldn't have much time. Okay, that's great. Can you see another sign or anything else that can help locate you and your mommy and daddy? She started to speak again but went into a coughing fit that lasted for several seconds. She managed to start again.
I don't see another street sign, but there's a bus stop or something near the road. I think I see number 18 on it. I think. Oh, no, help. The car's on fire now, help. Please help.
Static assaulted my eardrums as I lowered the phone in an anxiety-fueled stupor. The phone was dead again, of course. No indication that it had just answered a call from a terrified little girl in the future. I had to do something. I had no idea if it was really going to happen twice. I wouldn't take any chances, though. I hoped that the call came from within the city limits, otherwise it could be anywhere and the chance of finding the right street and getting there in time tomorrow was near impossible. I looked up the municipal bus routes and tried to find a bus stop or a route marked 18. With a little map work, I was able to locate it, and sure enough, it was right near the streetlight and intersection of Bishop Street and Mullen Avenue. I had my location, or so I thought. Now I just needed to know when it was going to happen. I realized that I forgot to ask what time it was when I was asking for details. I checked the phone just in case it had a timestamp from the call, but it wouldn't display anything. My hunch was that since the call yesterday came later in the evening, and the actual event occurred at a similar time of night, that the emergencies that corresponded to the calls occurred at the same time, just on the subsequent day. I didn't want to risk it in case I was wrong, and so I resolved to take the next day off of work and get to that intersection and go on a stakeout and wait. I got there at around 6 in the morning and I parked on the curb, near the bus stop but not blocking it. It was going to be a long day, but I tried to remain alert and vigilant. As I had expected, nothing happened in the morning or the afternoon. I was about to conclude my theory is correct and expect the accident to occur near 10 o'clock in the evening based on the time of the previous call. It was 4:42 in the afternoon and I was about to step out of the car to find a nearby restroom, since I had been sitting there for so long. Suddenly, the phone sprang to life with that eerie chime. I looked at the road frantically for a red Toyota. The phone kept ringing and I realized it might not be related to this instance. It might be a different emergency call. I answered and I heard a new desperate voice begging for help.
Hello, 911. My name is Stacy Thompson. I am at the rest stop on exit 112 and we need ambulance and police here right now. A woman has been assaulted and she's in bad shape. I think that she's still alive, but I don't know. Please send someone.
It was another one and I had to get more information. Alright, Miss Thomas, did you see anything happen or did you just find this woman?
I was driving on the interstate and I stopped to use the restroom. When I got to the woman's room, there was an out-of-order sign in front, but I heard a cry for help and found a woman who was battered and barely conscious inside. I don't know what happened, but we need help here now.
I considered how I could ask for more details without sounding strange and upsetting the woman on the phone. Alright, I promise that help will arrive. Would you please tell me if the woman has an ID on her to identify? Also, if she has any keys on her, would you be able to tell what kind of car she has parked there, if it is still there? There was an audible hesitation and I figured she was considering the odd question.
Isn't that something the police can do when they get here? We need help now. She's barely holding on. This is a medical emergency as well. Can't the police investigate?
It was a fair question and I could tell that she was getting impatient. And so I was considering how to rephrase it to emphasize the importance of the detail when, to my shock and horror, I heard the audible static that signaled the end of the divining phone call.
Hello, are you still there?
5 more seconds of loud static and the phone was dead. I wrote down all the details that I had for that call they would have to do. I figured at least I had a location and a general time, though the call was after it had happened, so I would have to get there early enough to try and stop it. I wrote down my game plan for tomorrow in my notebook. After my deliberation, I noticed that it was starting to get dark outside, and I had to focus on the accident that was going to happen that day. One emergency at a time, I figured. It was getting closer to 10 and I was on high alert. I still didn't know what I was going to do to stop the accident. When it was just a few minutes before 10, I got out of my car and walked up to the light. I was just going to have to get their attention when I saw them and hopefully stop them from crossing at the fateful moment. Sure enough, just a few minutes after 10, a red Toyota Corolla was heading towards the light and came to a stop. I looked in and saw a man driving the car with a woman in the passenger seat and a child in the back seat. I tried to flag them down, but they may have thought that I was a panhandler, and the father ignored my attempts at getting their attention. My heart was racing, the light was about to change to green, and I knew in my gut that it was going to happen. I decided to do something crazy, and I leaped into the road, directly blocking the car from going any further. The father scowled and started honking the horn at me, and the mother had a concerned, almost a pitying look on her face. I realized that I probably looked crazy to them, but I had to try and stop them from going at just that moment. I looked behind me and the light turned green. Nothing happened, and when I didn't see a speeding car immediately, I started to doubt myself. The father looked angry now and was unbuckling his seatbelt, probably to get out and throw me off of the road. He never got the chance. I felt the air pressure and the wind blast from a speeding car behind me, and a loud crash and a strangled scream rang out. I looked behind and a silver sedan was speeding away from the intersection, trailing blood in its wake. I didn't know what it was, but something seemed familiar about that car. I realized in sudden horror that I had seen it before. It was the young couple's car from the night before. It had been stolen and the carjacker was still in possession of it. Before I could make sense of the horrible connection, I realized that despite saving the family in the car, somebody else had not been so lucky. A cyclist had been crossing the road at the same time and was apparently struck by the speeding car instead of the family. I was stunned by the damage that had been done. A man on the bike was torn up and was very likely dead already. I could not process what I was seeing, but I heard a voice shouting in the dim periphery of my senses. "Richard, call 911, we need help. Somebody hit that man." Chloe's parents stepped out of the car and told her to stay inside. She regarded me as I backed away and I saw the couple near the body of the biker calling the real emergency services. I backed up with a confused mix of emotions. I had saved the young family, but it had led to that cyclist being stuck instead. As I stood there in a daze, my phone vibrated and I noticed that I had another message. I steadied my trembling hands and read it. "Very utilitarian of you. You saved 3 by sacrificing 1. You're doing better, but not quite there. Keep it up and don't disappoint me. M." I had no idea how to feel. I thought that I could save them, and I did, but at the cost of someone else. I couldn't figure out why this was happening to me. Why was I chosen? I felt confused and numb, but I had to put those feelings aside. Another crisis had to be resolved, as I had to prepare to handle the other call from tomorrow, today. All I knew about the next emergency was it was called in after the fact, and it was some sort of assault that left a woman almost dead in a bathroom at the rest stop near exit 112 near the interstate. The call ended earlier than usual, and I hoped this wasn't going to be a reoccurring thing. I barely had time to get that information. I was going to have to stop some sort of attack around the woman's bathroom, waiting however long it takes for the would-be attacker and the victim to show. Easy, right? With more time to prepare for this one, I knew that I would need to get some supplies. I went to a nearby Walmart and picked up some stakeout equipment. I bought some binoculars and some rope and zip ties in case I would catch the attacker and restrain him. I wanted to try and get a shotgun or something, but carrying that around near a public rest stop would draw too much attention, and so I settled for a short-range taser and a hammer for a backup weapon. I had no expectation of what would happen, but if this person was violent as the call had implied, I would need to be prepared for a confrontation. With my supplies in hand, I reviewed my plan. I had received the call around 4 in the afternoon, so I knew I had to get there well before then. As for what to do when I got there, I didn't know. Too few details on what had happened specifically. I would have to get there early and wing it and hopefully save that woman. Perhaps just being there might act as a deterrent. I spent the rest of the night trying to research the victims and see if there was any connection between them. I had no idea if there was, but something about those odd texts from M made me think that they might be less random than I first thought. I created a makeshift conspiracy board complete with different colored threads to link people and things together. Despite how crazy I felt when looking at the web of random people and events, I shrugged and set about the task of making sense of as much as I could while I had time. I looked up any news from the car accident today. I checked the closest hospital and found that the cyclist was brought in from a reported hit and run by the name of Calvin Thompson. He had arrived by ambulance, but he didn't survive. I felt the weight of guilt again. I knew that I was not at fault, but had I known that it would happen and my efforts to stop anybody from getting hurt had failed, I tried to ignore the nagging feeling of despair and focus on my research. I considered the name fairly common last name. Though with my mind searching for connections, I thought that maybe he might be related to the woman who called about tomorrow's accident. She said that her name was Stacy Thompson. It could be true, but I wasn't sure. I might be making connections where there are none to try and make sense of it all. I couldn't find out much about Kendra Wallace from the first call. The news had covered the violent stabbing and carjacking of her boyfriend, one Mr. Michael Duncan. The only thing that I found about him besides the news of the crime itself was a staff public disclosure request for an odd research firm known as Hope for the Future. His name showed up as an employee of the firm, but I wasn't able to glean many details about what sort of work they did or anything else. Whoever this M was, he clearly had some kind of control over how and when these things happened. Otherwise, how would he know about them as soon as they occurred? How the hell he could send me those text messages right after they happened on this time manipulating phone? Maybe he knew about them because he was the one causing them in the first place. I never got to see the man in black who carjacked that couple and stabbed the man from the first call. He could still be driving the car that he stole, the same car that he was driving when he had killed that cyclist in place of the family. I considered that he may even be parked at the rest stop tomorrow somewhere, waiting for another victim to come by. Based on the taunting messages, he would also be waiting for me and whatever it was he expected me to do. It seemed like it was some sick game and he was using some impossible time manipulation skill to predict the future as a means of messing with or testing people. Those messages he sends, they all read like this is some sort of test that he's giving me, and then I have to meet some expected outcome that only he knows about. I felt like I was walking into a trap or some unwinnable situation, yet I knew if I did nothing, then the tragedies would really happen. I slept poorly that night and had dreams of failing to rescue the people who had called for help. I saw the faces of the people that I had already failed, the men who had died already because I couldn't find a way to save them. I ended up oversleeping and it was nearly 10 in the morning. I had to get going. I had no idea how long the woman was stuck in there before she was discovered. I grabbed my bag of supplies and started on my way to the highway and then to the rest stop by exit 112. I arrived early in the morning and parked near the men's restroom. I was close enough to the woman's to scout any movement in or out of it with my binoculars. Despite my good intentions, I knew how it might look, so I also picked up a newspaper as well. Not to read it, but more as a cover in case somebody looked too closely and saw me sitting in a car with binoculars trained on the woman's restroom. I didn't want to attract notice and throw the whole plan off. I had no idea what might happen if I scared the attacker away by some incidental force. Maybe he would attack someone else. Maybe it would even be worse than just one person. I didn't know, but I would not risk it. A few hours passed and it was noon already. The rest stop wasn't very busy and a few cars actually stopped in the hours that I had been waiting. I figured that was a good thing since it would be easier to notice anything amiss. I kept my broken phone close at hand in case I received another emergency call while waiting like before. At around 3 o'clock, I saw a white sedan drive up and park. A well-dressed and fairly attractive woman got out and went in by herself. I was on high alert as I knew it was within an hour of the call's time. My paranoia was vindicated when a moment later, I looked and saw a tall figure dressed in dark clothes sneaking quickly to the entrance. He put down a sign that said, "Out of order," and appeared to enter the restroom. I nearly tripped over my own feet scrambling to get out of the car and gather up my gear. I had the taser in hand and the hammer in my pocket. I rushed to the restroom and didn't hear anything inside yet. I knew that I didn't have time to think it over and I rushed headlong through the door. I looked left and right and didn't see the figure in black anywhere. As I stood there in confusion, I saw a stall door open and a woman step out. Leaving her stall and seeing me standing there holding a taser looking all around the woman's restroom, she very quickly let loose an understandable scream. I realized immediately how it looked and I held up my hands and offered a prompt. Sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought that somebody came in here and I was trying to stop them myself. I promise that I'm not here for you, or rather not here to do anything bad at least. I was cut off from my apologetic rambling by a stiff shot to the back of my head. My eyes darkened, but I managed to retain consciousness as I fumbled on the ground, dropping the taser and hearing it slide away from me where I lay prone on the floor. The woman screamed again and I heard heavy footsteps and looked up to see a large man blocking the exit. I thought that I heard an amused chuckle as he kicked me in the ribs so hard I thought that I would vomit them up. As I writhed on the ground, he took a step toward the woman and she fell back trying to retain her composure, but clearly confused and terrified of what she was seeing. I saw the feet of my attacker walk past me. He didn't speak, but I knew what would happen if I didn't do anything. As he stomped forward and menacingly toward the woman, I mustered up enough strength to grab the hammer from my pocket, push myself up enough to the crouched position and swing hard for his legs. I was rewarded with a satisfying crack and I made contact with his ankle and I hoped that I had broken it. There was a muffled cry of pain that almost sounded like a scream being put through a static filter and run at half speed. The man in black crumpled to the floor to join me. The woman looked like she was going to try and intercede on my behalf, but the man produced a large knife and when I saw the gleam of the blade, I shouted to her too. "Run!" She used the opportunity and leaped over us and out of there. I heard frantic cries for 911 outside and then distressed screaming about how they were not answering. She was clearly trying to call for help but was unable to get a call out. I saw the man turn to face me and he wore a black face mask as well as clothes. The mask was disturbing. It had no features, just a plain blank face mask, but it seemed to have a weird sort of ambient static charge, like it could send out a jolt at any moment, and the weird buzzing sound when he spoke made it more unsettling. I couldn't see any of his real features underneath, but I heard an angry and pained grunt as he raised the knife that he had and came after me. I threw myself back at the wall, avoiding a stab directed at my heart. I had to disarm him, so I swung the hammer at his hand, and I managed to knock the blade free. In my moment of tactical satisfaction, I didn't see his other hand balled into a fist, and he smashed me across the face with a brutal hook that left my ears ringing. I felt blood coming out of my nose and he struck me several more times in the face. I tried to cover up and he stomped my prone form. Strange static filled my head and he bent down over me and he proceeded to throttle me. I thought that I was going to die, but I heard another strange grunt of amusement, and he suddenly stood up, somehow on his broken foot, and laughed. Before he was gone, he turned back and spoke in a manner that I could actually understand, despite the odd static. "Are you going to check your messages? It's for you." I gasped for breath and didn't know how I was still alive or why he left, but then I saw the phone had a missed notification. It read, "Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. You saved an innocent stranger from a beating and you took one yourself. Admirable and stupid. Shouldn't say too much, but consider who you're really saving and why. Have to go now, you should really answer your phone, somebody's calling and it's rude not to pick up. M." I sat alone on the restroom floor, bloodied and confused as the message vanished and the phone began to ring. I wiped the blood from my nose and I answered the call. I held the phone up to my head with the arm that was not as injured and heard a panicked voice call out on the line.
Help, there's a fire here and we're stuck in the building.
A brief coughing fit interrupted the caller, no doubt due to smoke inhalation. I could hear an inferno in the background and they continued.
My name is Kylie Burke and I'm a secretary at the Hope for the Future Research Center on 311 Lang Street. We don't know what happened, but a fire broke out and somebody blocked the exits. We're stuck in here. We tried breaking the doors down, but we can't. And it's getting hot to the touch. Help us. We're going to die unless you send the fire department now. Please help.
I wasn't sure how I was going to stop a fire, but I would have to do something to prevent it in the first place. It sounded like details were few and I was trying to think of what else to ask, to see if any more information could be gleaned when I heard the static and the panicked.
Help us, please.
A loud crash signaled the end of the call and the line was dead again. I had to find that building and do something to stop that fire. I didn't know how many people were in that building besides Kylie, but it could be dozens or even hundreds, and they were likely all stuck and would be burned alive. My mind raced. Lots of things could start a fire, but I considered the blocked doors in these situations stank of some malicious influence. It might even be the same person who's been committing all of the other future crimes. So far, he has been at every event, and my gut convinced me that he would be there and would likely be the one starting the fire. I pocketed my phone and tried to rise, but my whole body ached from being beaten almost lifeless. The shock and adrenaline of the fight and answering another call was starting to subside, and I was finally feeling just how injured I really was. As I tried to stand up, I fell back down with a shock that made my body writhe in pain. Just then, the woman that I had saved from the attack earlier came back in and tried to help me. Her initial concern must have abated when she saw me try and defend her, though she still had a somewhat doubtful look on her face when dealing with me. She did seem to want to help now and said, "I'm sorry, I can't get a hold of anyone. This place became a dead zone all of a sudden, and I can't get the police or an ambulance here. It seems like you really need some medical attention. Thank you for stopping that man, but who was he and how did you know that he was coming for me?" The question was a good one, and I struggled to come up with an answer that she would believe, since I couldn't exactly tell her that I got a call from the future where she was likely dead. "Oh, I don't know who he was, but I saw him creeping around and thought that he might be up to something when I saw him come up in here. I'm sorry for scaring you earlier." I introduced myself and she did the same. I learned her name was Bianca Sinclair and she was a researcher at the Hope for the Future. That name was cropping up a lot. I wondered if maybe M was targeting people who worked there for some reason. This many employees being potential victims, it couldn't be a coincidence. I remembered what M said about how I should consider who you're really saving and why. I needed to get more information about what these people were doing and why they might be targeted. We moved out of the restroom and to a bench where we could await some help. The whole rest stop seemed to have no traffic today, so nobody else came through to assist. The emergency line was still out and Bianca was unable to call out to any other lines. We had been waiting so long that it had been almost an hour and we finally flagged somebody else down. As soon as the woman approached us and she spoke, I recognized the voice as the one from the call and I knew that I had met Stacy Thompson. After introducing ourselves, Stacy had offered to go get help for us, but I did not have time to spend at the hospital despite my injuries, so I declined. I did ask her why she was heading into town and apparently she had been coming this way to visit her family. It turned out that her brother had just been killed and she was going to be with her family to mourn his loss. I realized my hunch was likely confirmed, but just to make sure I asked what his name was, and when she told me, I felt a wave of realization and despair. His name was Kelvin Thompson and he had been struck by a car and killed while cycling at night yesterday. As I was mulling in my own sense of sadness and defeat at the memory of how my actions had inadvertently led to his death, Bianca perked up at the mention of the name. "Calvin Thompson? You're his sister." Stacy nodded and confirmed. "Yeah, why?" "Well, your brother and I worked together, or worked, I should say. I'm so sorry that something so terrible happened." My ears perked up and I listened to them speak more about Calvin. Now to find out he worked for the Hope for the Future Foundation as well. It was all too much. Everyone that I met during this entire debacle has had some connection to this foundation. What were they anyway? I was in a unique position to find out more since some workers were here with me now. I could glean more info and maybe see what was going on, and then I could follow up tomorrow at the facility, assuming that it could keep from burning to the ground. I tried to inquire about what sort of work the foundation did, but Bianca was tight-lipped about it, and Stacy indicated her brother was never forthcoming in the sort of research that they did either. Just vague statements about research and development into new technologies and some renewable energy solutions, but a few specifics. In the end, I didn't know why somebody would want to kill the people who work there. I had some suspicions that Bianca was not telling me everything though. I did not blame her. It was her work and it was private. I couldn't tell her what I really knew about why I thought she might be in danger, but something happened there that has made them a target for whoever or whatever M is. I had to make do with the knowledge that I had since I had another incident to stop tomorrow. Stacy departed as she had to get back on the road and said goodbye. Before Bianca could leave, I tried to ply her with some questions about her work. I did have a question about the foundation. How many people worked at the Lang Avenue building? Is it open tomorrow? Bianca regarded the question furtively and asked, "Why do you want to know that?" "Well, I just wanted to visit and see what sort of work is done there. I'm really interested in new technologies and innovation." I was not lying, at least, not completely, but she had a doubtful look on her face. She tried to discourage me, but I was persistent. "Please, I'm very curious, and it could be a personal favor for me if you wanted to repay me for the help." I smiled, and the motion hurt my face after getting stomped recently. I could tell that she felt sorry for me and relented. "All right, I can take you on the investor tour, and if anybody asked you, you're a new shareholder. It's not open to the public." "Oh, thank you so much. I promise that I won't be any trouble." It was sincere, since if things went the right way, I would be saving her and all her coworkers from a fiery fate. I had my way in now. I just needed to ensure that I could evacuate those people on time or stop the fire in the first place. Since I couldn't bring a fire engine to the site, I would have to make do with a visit at around the time shortly before the call. I needed to stop the fire before it happened. The next morning, Bianca and I set out to the foundation. She spoke a little bit more, and what they did and the answers were not something that I suspected. It sounded like some sort of sci-fi movie premise, but the Hope for Future Foundation was actually trying to research tachyons and the potential to send things forward or backward in time. I thought she was joking with me, but when I started to laugh, I saw the look of genuine sincerity and my jaw almost hit the floor. I wondered just then if I should tell her about the phone. If she knew, maybe she could figure out how it's happening and why to me. It could not be a coincidence that I got embroiled with some futuristic foundation that can send things through time, and I just so happened to start receiving calls from the future. I decided to ask her something, trying not to give away too much. "I know you probably couldn't confirm to the public, but has anybody really done it? I mean, sent an object back in time." She looked uncomfortable and responded with a curt, "That's classified." "Why do you ask?" "Just curious. I was also wondering if something like a phone or a computer could be used to send a message from a different time to now using that method. Would that be possible?" Her eyes narrowed, and I was afraid that I said too much. "That's a very specific suggestion. Why would you think that's something that we could do?" I just mumbled a feigned excuse under my breath and then pointed to the building that we were approaching like an impatient child and asked, "Oh, is that it?" hoping it would change the subject from my all too specific question. She nodded and looked away, clearly not fully trusting my distraction but too polite to grill me on it. We had indeed made it to the foundation. Bianca parked and we got out and headed for the entrance. The building and attached grounds were massive, and I thought that there might be around 100 or so staff members. I had to find a way to stop that fire. She led us through the main doors and got me a visitor's pass, and I attached the card to my shirt. She told me up front that over 2/3 of the complex were off limit to visitors, and we would mostly be viewing office space and some of the nearly complete energy projects. She also insisted in no uncertain terms to not bring up any of the tachyon research or time travel in general. She said that it could get her in big trouble if they found out she told somebody outside the company. I promised to keep that information to myself and thanked her again for taking me to visit. I stayed vigilant about the time and where we were. I saw fire suppression sprinklers and wondered if somehow the arsonists had tampered with them, and that's how they failed to put the fire out before it spread. More and more I felt that I would need to try and stop this before it happened. If it spread, I didn't know how I would keep everyone safe. We were walking down a corridor to the next section of the tour when a group of researchers in hazmat suits walked past us. I wouldn't have thought anything of it, but I felt a strong static discharge around me as one of them passed by. My phone was vibrating too, and an all too familiar unsettling buzz was in the air. I looked back and saw one of the hazmat suit-wearing scientists break off from the group, and I saw the glimmer of a strange hazy aura around their covered face. My heart sank. He was here. I stopped walking and Bianca looked back, wondering why I had paused. "What is it? What's wrong?" I didn't know what to do or say. I couldn't explain it, but I somehow knew that that was him, that was M. I couldn't tell Bianca yet, but I had to come up with something. I decided that I would have to lie for the greater good. I think that I smell smoke. I think there's a fire." She looked around and back at me and said, "I don't smell anything. What are you doing? Don't make a scene. You're going to get me in trouble." It was too late to go back now. I screamed, "Fire!" at the top of my lungs, and to my fortune, I found a discreetly placed fire alarm on the wall, and with one apologetic look back to Bianca, whose face had turned red with embarrassment on my behalf, I threw the switch and the building came alive with the blaring of the fire alarm. An automated evacuation PA system informed us how to effect the building's evacuation in a timely and orderly fashion. Maintenance and security officers were running through the halls trying to find the source of the fire. When we got outside, Bianca pulled me off to the side away from the larger groups of employees evacuating and half screamed, half whispered, "What the hell was that? Did you seriously have me take you here just to pull a prank on my entire workplace? Why did you do that? If they find out that it was you and I let you in here, I could be fired." She was fuming, and understandably so. I realized that I would have to tell her the truth, and hopefully, considering her unique perspective, she would believe me. I promise I had a good reason. There was a fire, or rather there was going to be a fire. I know because I received an emergency phone call from the office's secretary, Kylie Burke, about a huge fire breaking out and the staff being locked inside somehow. I saw Bianca's eyes flash with recognition when I had mentioned the name, but she still looked incredulous. Why would she call you a stranger about an emergency and not the fire department? And also, there's clearly no fire here now, so how and why would anybody think that there was? I steeled myself to reveal the full truth and tried my best to not look as crazy as I felt. "Because it hasn't happened yet, and I think that I may just have stopped it. I think I did because the call about the fire came yesterday shortly after we had met. Just like a call warning me that you would be attacked in that bathroom. It came a day before it happened. I know that it sounds crazy, but..." I pulled on my broken phone to illustrate the point. "I've been getting 911 calls from people for emergencies that will happen exactly 24 hours after the call." I saw a mixture of emotions on her face. She clearly considered this and what I had said earlier about devices traveling through time. And then there was the nature of research that they were doing there. She paused while processing all of this bizarre story. As she was about to respond to my insane confession, the phone vibrated, and right on time, always after the dust had settled, a message had arrived in the inbox of my phone. I told Bianca to stand close and look at the message before it disappeared. Well then, good job, you finally got the jump on me. Nice work with the alarm. Threw this place into a preemptive fire panic. I could still get a few of them if I went through with it, but not as effective now. I bet you're feeling proud of yourself, aren't you? You think you saved so many people. You bought them time, that's all. If you knew the true scope of what they've done here, you might not be so quick to play the role of savior. Nevertheless, well played. No collateral even. You're almost there. Keep your eyes open and be ready for what happens next. M. I felt anxiety bubbling at the threat of what happens next, but I looked at Bianca, who was scrutinizing the message, and then watched in confusion as the message vanished shortly afterward, leaving no trace and no UI on screen to even attempt to look for it again. Just dead black. I tried to break the ice on her confused state of bewilderment by stating that person messages me after every event. They seem to be setting this all up like some weird test, but I don't know to what end. The victims have almost been exclusively people who work at this foundation. Do you have any idea who might be targeting researchers here at your work? Bianca considered the question, and then, as if mulling over the message in her mind a bit more, I heard her mumble. No, it couldn't be. She turned back to me and flatly stated, "We need to talk. I think I know what could be happening, and if he's still alive, nobody here is safe anymore." My mind raced and my heart rose. She knew something, and maybe we could put a stop to this insanity after all. I leaned forward and eagerly said, "Tell me everything." Once the bedlam from the fire alarm had died down, Bianca took me back into the building. She spoke to some of the security personnel, and I was escorted into one of the restricted sections. She turned back to me with a look of obvious anxiety. "We need to go to my office. It'll be safe there to discuss what I think's happening. After we do that, though," she paused, making sure that she had my attention, "we will need to bring this matter to the Foundation directors. The situation is a potential danger to the entire establishment and all the personnel associated with it, as well as who knows how many others." I nodded my head, not wanting to force her to speak more on the matter until we were in a secure setting. Though I was anxious to learn what she knew about what the hell was going on. I didn't have to wait too long. We walked through a network of halls leading further in. The halls gave way to a secure bunker-like wing of the facility. Entering an enormous security door, I had to do a double take as we passed by several arrays of odd-looking technology in the background. I was about to ask Bianca what they were, but as I looked at her, she seemed to be getting more nervous as we moved on. We suddenly veered left and a small door was visible with the number 12 on it. She swiped a key card that she had in her coat and an electronic lock disengaged, and we moved into a small office with thick dull gray walls and minimal decorations. A desk, a computer, and various books lay strewn among the surface of a plain metal desk, and Bianca gestured for me to sit in the chair opposite of hers. I obliged, and as soon as I sat down, she had a pen and paper in hand and ready to take notes on whatever we had discussed, presumably. I was about to ask her what was really going on when she asked the first question. "Where did you find the device? I mean the phone, was it acquired recently?" "Well, I didn't find it. It's my phone. I dropped it down a small flight of stairs near my work. It broke, of course, and after breaking it, it started doing this, but what exactly?" She cut me off again and started in with another barrage of questions. "Are you able to use it to send any message or call? Do any other functions remain? How many calls have you received? How many messages from this M person?" I was starting to get frustrated. "Hey, I thought you were going to be telling me what happened. I already told you what I know. I don't know how this works. I've been receiving these calls for a few days, and in each case, there has been a call for help to emergency services that somehow comes to my phone. It is always about something exactly 24 hours before it happens, and I've tried to stop almost all of them. Now, if you don't mind, would you tell me who the hell you think that M is? She looked down at her papers and back at me with a plaintive sigh as if she was not sure if she should humor me in things that I wouldn't understand. I tried not to take offense to it, but she was getting more and more impatient with me as we went on. I'm sorry I got carried away. I know that you must want answers. It is just that this situation is very sensitive and well. She paused again, her impatience giving way to that same concerned look from earlier. You must understand that what I can tell you is limited. Many things are strictly confidential, and what I do tell you must never leave this building. I nodded my head again and she continued. Oh good. Well, as I stated before, this foundation has been researching radical new technologies that would revolutionize and change the world as we know it. One of the most significant projects under our purview was Project Echo. This initiative was led by one of our best, a brilliant man named Dr. Roland Merrick. Merrick was not only the director of Project Echo, but the mastermind behind the research involved in its inception. The project was an attempt to successfully send an object back in time using a tachyon transmitter. Merrick was a genius in the field of temporal research and experimentation. This project of his had even reached the point where the experiments involving the proposed goal of transporting objects forward or backward through time were becoming genuinely possible. All that was left was a practical test of the device. But she trailed off, her tone shifting from one of admiration to tragic concern while she continued. There was a terrible accident that occurred during the first fateful attempt. An energy spike threatened to destroy the project and set us back years in our efforts. Dr. Merrick broke the safety quarantine in an effort to shut it down and save the device and save his life's work. It was too late, however, and Dr. Merrick ended up being wholly disintegrated on an atomic level, along with the devices that he was carrying. We continued following up on his project, but he has been dead as far as we knew for over a year. At least it seemed he was until now. Considering this mysterious attacker who was able to predict things before they happen, and his targeting Foundation members along with leaving the initial M in a message. While it suggests an outcome that we did not expect. I couldn't believe the insane tale that was being told to me. Secret time travel research. Yeah, this was crazy stuff. Yet it was hard not to try and believe some of it, considering what I had experienced so far. How else was my broken phone receiving calls from the future? But that begged the question, why am I able to receive the calls? And how or why is this dead scientist returned from beyond, contacting me after my efforts to prevent disasters that he might very well be orchestrating? She looked at me and then to her notes and responded, well, that is the question. Remarkably, it seems that he is not dead, but actually made it back through time. Why he has contacted you, I'm not sure. I considered her answer, but was still very confused on one detail in particular. M's motive. If he is back, why would he be trying to kill you all? Shouldn't he be trying to get in contact and share his discovery and not murder the faculty? She seemed caught off guard by my question and looked away to her papers while giving me a dismissive sounding. I don't know why he would wish to kill his former coworkers. Perhaps the process of phasing between time has damaged his mind, and he's lashing out at the people that he can remember. Maybe he blames the Foundation for letting it happen to him in the first place, I don't know. The explanation didn't sound authentic and I felt like she was holding something back. I didn't push the subject, but I knew there was more to M, or should I say Merrick and his motivations. And now that you have your answers, I'm going to need you to come with me and speak to the board and see what they think we should do. Alright, but what else do you need from me? I asked, feeling more uncomfortable as I sat there, not knowing what was going to happen to me or what M might try to do next. We just need to see what the board suggests we do now that the faculty might be compromised. This is a serious situation, and it has been shown that you are not entirely safe either, despite his attempts at communicating with you. We left Bianca's office and walked down a corridor to a large antechamber that looked more like a military command and control center. There were armed guards and scientists everywhere. Cables snaked in every direction, and the thrum of energy could practically be felt in the room upon entering. Several scientists sat around a table discussing and murmuring things to each other, and Bianca approached them slowly. "Directors, I apologize for the suddenness of this meeting, but we have a serious situation." She paused briefly, waiting for the entire group of members at the table to turn their attention to her. "I have uncovered evidence that suggests that Dr. Merrick is still alive, and worse, that he's come back here and made contact with a temporal anomaly. He seems to be contacting someone through the anomaly and is trying to kill faculty members." There is a mixture of gasps, dismissive chuckles, and stern grunts as the collective of board members digested the news that they had received. A tall man sitting at the head of the table held up a hand, and the rest of them quieted down. "If Merrick has come back somehow and his memory is intact, he will have remembered what happened. He is likely already plotting some kind of revenge on all the members of Project Echo, which led to his unfortunate accident. It is also likely that he was responsible for Calvin and Michael's deaths. Put the facility on high alert, and we need to do something about this madman." I heard the names spoken and remembered the first two victims. I knew they worked here, but did both men work on this Project Echo? What did they do to Merrick besides failing to save him from getting zapped by a machine? Another voice chimed in. "What about the anomaly you mentioned? Is it still intact and still here?" Bianca paused a moment, looking uncomfortable, and then pointed to me. I held up my hands and started to panic. What were they going to do to me? "No, wait, I don't know what you all think that I am, but I did not sign up for any of this. I just broke my phone and was trying to get a new one from the store before I got the first of those weird calls." I pulled out the phone, and everybody took a step back like I had just drawn a gun on them. There was a high-pitched beeping from one of the machines nearby, and an attendant looked at the screen and then back at me, and his jaw dropped. They clearly knew something about this thing that I didn't. I had to take a chance to try and get out of the situation, and so I told them, "If I give you guys this broken phone, can I leave? It sounds like you need it and not me." There were murmurs and whispered conversations, and when most of their heads began shaking in disapproval, I knew that I was in trouble. Bianca spoke again. "It would be best if you gave us the device and came with us to a holding cell. If Merrick is going to contact you again, we need to know. He might only talk to you, and we need to find him, track him, and stop him. So you're going to need to come with us." She said it all with a pained expression of resignation, clearly not wanting to have me taken into custody, but not being able to go against the director's orders. "Wait a minute, hold me. No way, you don't have the right to detain me. I haven't done anything wrong, and you're a goddamn research facility. You are not the government. Are you?" My rant was met by stony faces and no answer to my question. My heart sank, and I realized that these people were serious. "I don't understand this. You're saying that there's some time-manipulating madman trying to kill everybody here, and you want to lock me up and take away the only device that has given me an edge." I was getting more scared and confused by the moment. This turnaround and Bianca's betrayal of trust was especially painful, though in the end, she didn't have much of a choice. As the guards moved in, I kept speaking to try and convince them. "What are you going to do about him? Why is he really trying to kill you all?" The director stood up and brushed off his coat and responded with a dismissive, "I'm afraid the rest is classified. Get this man out of here and confiscate the device. We will need to run some tests on it. If Merrick calls, bring it back to him and put both of them in the tracking room." Several guards moved towards me. I was about to be taken away when the phone vibrated, and I pulled it out to look at the screen, now come to life. The security personnel backed away at the urging of the scientists, since they didn't want the device to be damaged, which I found ironic since I broke the thing already, and that's what had started this mess. The director spoke again, more concerned with the phone than anything else. "What does it say?" he asked with genuine interest. I read the message but didn't say anything out loud. It just said, "Duck." On instinct, I followed the command and grabbed Bianca's arm and pulled her down as well. We both hit the floor and a large structural beam crashed down and swung into the room, smashing into all of the guards and several scientists. It missed the board members by inches, and we only narrowly avoided being crushed by abiding the warning from the message. The director at the head of the table stood up and shouted, "Arrest that man and get that phone." I heard guards mobilizing nearby, and it didn't need any more prompting from there. I ran. Bianca considered following me for a moment and then held onto my hand as if considering restraining me. She ended up letting go with a look of sad resignation and muttered the words, "Go, quick." I started sprinting down the main hall and was about to run headlong into a group of guards when my phone messaged me again and said, "Stop, drop to the ground." Once again, I followed the instruction. As the guard charged in to seize me, a panel on the wall exploded and a current of electrical energy bolted through all the guards and violently electrocuted them until they all lay on the ground smoldering. The smell of burning skin and ozone was horrifying, and I checked myself to find that I was somehow unharmed. I managed to get away down a random technical corridor. I couldn't see anything, but they were closing in by the sounds of footsteps. I ducked into a supply room to hide. As I huddled in the corner, I couldn't believe it when my phone started ringing again. It was a bad time for a call, but I answered it all the same. It sounded distorted and I could barely hear through all the static.
Hello, 911. I would like to report an emergency.
I got out my notepad and got ready, but I heard another static burst.
Did you want to know?
Come again. Did I want to know what? What happened? Is somebody injured? The voice continued and an awful static squelch almost deafened me.
Just kidding. You really are the real deal, running for your life but still takes a call to try and help someone. Anyway, did you want to know what really happened?
The voice altered again and I realized that it was most likely M that I was speaking with.
I'm just calling to say it's not 24 hours this time. These people are going to die. My wife and children, myself, we all die due to their negligence. If you do exactly what I tell you, you can hear the other side of the story, and then you will have to decide if they're worth saving. You have no idea what they've done or worse, what they will do. The emergency this time is that the Hope for the Future main research building has a device that contains such a prestigious amount of energy that, if overloaded, it could obliterate this facility into surrounding 4 to 5 miles. It is going to explode, and there's nothing that those murdering, brainwashing, immoral maniacs can do about it this time. I will get you out of there, and you will have 3 options. Use the next hour to get as far away as possible and save yourself, which I doubt you'll pick.
I heard a static-laden chuckle that hurt my ear.
Second option, you can meet me at the observation tower outside Building 2. There I can tell you the real truth of what happened, and you can decide what you will do on their behalf. Third option, you can listen to their lies, try and stop me and fail. Or worse, go willingly into their custody and they can proceed to disavow knowledge that you were ever here while they experiment on you and you find some horrible way to die in their custody, not knowing why you ever tried to save them. I know that you'll make the right choice. I have faith. Do you?
Before I could say a word in response, the line went dead and I was left with an impossible task. I had to stop him from killing all these people. Despite their attempts at abducting me, they did not deserve to die in a fiery explosion, especially not Bianca. Though I did not exactly trust them either, and Emmett said something about them killing his family and others. There were enough serious accusations and evidence to give me pause in trusting either the Foundation or M. Though I could not help but consider, what did he know? I had to make a decision one way or the other. Time was running out. My mind was racing. I didn't have much time as I considered what to do. First, I had the pressing matter of escaping the facility. I had to escape and find M. I had to find out what he knew. While plotting a means of escape, I got another message on the phone. I read the message and saw a longer message than normal. It looked like instructions. You might want to write this down and follow these steps exactly. Write fast since the message won't stay on the phone very long. Open the door in exactly 1 minute and 52 seconds after the message is gone. Turn right and go towards the maintenance closet. There will be a tunnel connecting it to the main access concourse. Ignore the steam and any exploding pipes. That's just some cover for you. Don't take too long, since if it dissipates, a group of about a dozen guards will see you and likely catch you if you're not fast enough. Keep heading down the main path and take a left to find an employee locker room. There is a hazmat suit that will help disguise you and security credentials in case anybody asks. Head to the main bulkhead and place the phone on the power junction and wait for the door to open. There might be a hissing sound, that's normal. Head out the main door and move along the northeast road to get to the path to building 2. I'll be waiting for you and your decision at the top of the watchtower. I finished writing down the instructions just as the message had vanished. I looked at my hastily scrawled copy and remembered that I needed to start counting. I didn't have a stopwatch and obviously my phone wouldn't work, so I counted and hoped that I would get it right. At the moment I reached 1 minute and 52 seconds, I threw the door open and ran. I moved per the instructions that I had tried to commit to memory in the brief time that I had. I was moving as quickly as I figured I was supposed to be moving, and I reached the main access path. I almost fell back and suppressed a gasp of surprise as several armed guards were visible on the other side of the path. Something was wrong. There was supposed to be some sort of steam cover. I tried to carefully step back around the corner, but I heard a voice yell out to, "Stop." I was about to run back the way that I had come from when that same voice turned into a scream as I saw several pipes around the guard's head explode in unison. He was enveloped in scalding steam that burned him so severely that he fell down into an agony-induced sort of coma. I had no idea if he was alive, but I didn't have time to check. The other guards had heard his shouted warning and were on high alert. I took the opportunity to flee down the corridor. Sure enough, when I had reached the locker room, it was empty of personnel and a single hazmat suit was draped over a bench near the back corner. I put it on as quickly as I could and pocketed the key card that was with it as well. I found the main bulkhead door and placed the phone near the power junction, and the hissing sound was almost immediate. I did not like the sequence of other sounds that began to carry through the machinery, but I had no time to worry about it, and so I moved on. I hustled toward the main exit and guards were still moving about, but nobody seemed to question me as I moved out. When I had almost exited the building, I looked back and felt a pang of guilt. I had to know what was really going on, but could I really endanger all these people? I didn't know what M was really capable of, but I thought that maybe I should at least warn someone. I decided to approach the front desk and speak to the receptionist on my way out. She looked confused as I approached, no doubt wondering what a high-level scientist, at least according to my fake credentials, was asking her. Yes, can I help you, sir?" I recognized the voice immediately. It was Kylie Burke, the same woman who I had received the emergency call from about the fire that I had prevented. "Yes, ma'am, I need you to deliver a message to Dr. Bianca Sinclair." I wrote a quick message in my notes telling her about the danger to the facility and that they should evacuate and get everybody out of there as soon as possible. I folded the note and gave it to Kylie Burke and asked her to deliver it immediately. She looked confused, but I didn't have time to explain, and so I shouted, "Now, that's an order." And she took the paper and left with a scared and apologetic look. I felt bad for yelling at her, but unfortunately, it had become a matter of life and death and time was not on our side. I needed enough time to get out of there without a commotion, so I couldn't tell her directly of the threat. I hoped by the time that Bianca read the note or Miss Burke did, they would know about the threat and hopefully start getting people out of the building in time, before whatever M had planned occurred and the whole place was blown away. I rushed out of the building and toward the path leading to the watchtower. I could see it in the distance, beckoning me to my fate and whatever answers that M had in store for me. I reached the base of the tower and I heard alarms sounding in the distance back at the main building. I hoped that those were evacuation sirens. I started ascending the tower and I felt a familiar thrumming of energy and a static charge that made my teeth hurt. It felt like I was moving the wrong direction in snapshots that are arranged out of sequence. I knew that meant that he was close. Reaching the top of the tower, I saw him with his back turned, looking down at the facility's grounds. There you are, my friend. I knew that you would make it. A little bit late, but that's okay. I think I owe you an apology. I'm sorry I had to know. I had to know that you would make the right decision. You were a variable, but I had faith that you would do the right thing. Isn't that what you're here to do now, the right thing? M turned to face me and the black hood was down and I looked at the face of the man at least where a normal face should have been. What I saw in place of a face was a kaleidoscope of unnatural colors and hues, not natural to this plane of existence, and it made my eyes hurt. The wrongness of his entire being was palpable. He did not exist in this place or time, yet here he was, an impossibility made possible. I had no idea what to do or say. My mind had gone blank. I managed to think back to the one question that I had been asking myself this entire time. Why me? Why was I the one you contacted? He gave a chuckle which was partly phased out by some unseen force and rendered half of it silent. He spoke once his voice had returned. Right place, right time, I suppose. That phone was on me when I was atomized. Somehow it came back as well, but it became unstable and I could not hold on to it anymore. When I woke up from the blast, I tried to call 911 and get emergency services down to the building, but that was when I realized I couldn't. I had been blasted out of time and reappeared in this unstable form. He held out his arms and I saw the odd array of impossible glimmers of half-reality radiating off of him. He continued. The phone reached someone or something, but as it did, it became more unstable. It started reacting to the temporal energy that I was surrounded by, so I had to get rid of it. It was too dangerous to just leave with anybody, so I took a chance. When I saw you drop your phone down that flight of stairs, I used that moment to switch phones with you. M pulled out a phone that looked just like the one that I had been carrying, but after he threw it to me and I booted it up, I realized it was my original phone. I had been carrying his phone this whole time and this device had apparently traveled through time. He watched my confusion and made an approximation of laughter again and continued. So not really a specific reason, though I will say that you did not disappoint. As soon as you knew what was happening, you did your best to stop all the death that you could. That is an admirable quality, which is why I trusted that you will continue to try and stop the things yet to come. This foundation, hope for a future, it has a rot that will lead it and the rest of the world into damnation. I know, I've seen it, both the way it begins and ends. He took a step forward and held out a hand, gesturing to the building below and the entire foundation grounds. We had good intentions to start if we were able to utilize this technology to tap unharvested resources out of time. We could have a potentially endless supply of energy. That was the plan at least until the intentions of the board had changed. Due to the machinations of the warmongers, the scientists that worked with defense contractors and only saw the way this could be adapted to military use, the scope of their plan for my research was shifted. He seemed to trail off and looked off into the sky above. I was about to ask him to continue when he spoke again. I saw the thing that they will do, if left to their own devices. I have seen what they will enact with my life's work if they're allowed to. They wanted to try and transport living being through time. I explained the potential harm in sending a living being backwards or forwards in time. Do you know what they end up doing? He spun around and began raving. They recruit children and brainwash them while accelerating their growth rates using the device to make soldiers that could be manipulated from birth and grow so quickly that it would give them another limitless resource besides energy. People. They use this temporal manipulation to create a large army of these child soldiers among other atrocities. My own son gets taken and forced into the same program. He dies shortly afterward. My wife tries to put a stop to the foundation, but she is silenced as well. He paused and spat on the ground and looked back at me intently, and the horrible visage grew even worse. That's not all, M said while watching me recoil at his previous admission. There are plans to evolve further if they're successful. The future becomes a dystopia where the Foundation controls nearly all the levers of power and essentially becomes the main force behind the government and the nation's military. They rule almost unopposed and delve into even more unethical practices. All of this being enabled by their exploitation of my life's work, the temporal transmitter. It is still intact and they will eventually manage to reactivate it, and when that happens, he trailed off again, clenched his fist, and resumed. Before that happens, they must be stopped, and the only way to ensure that they are is if the entire rotten tree is felled. His visage took on an eerie quality as he stood there staring intently at me while he declared his homicidal plans. In a few years, they change the state of the world. In a few decades, their manipulation ends up leaving the world a war-torn and blasted hellscape. They deserve a death far worse than what I'm providing them. I took an involuntary step back at the horrific implications of what he was saying. If that was what the future had in store, we were all in real trouble. I agreed that the device needed to be destroyed, along with his research, but condemning everybody that worked there seemed a step too far. I summoned my courage and stepped forward, asking him, "What do you need from me? Why do you need my help or think that I would help you kill all those people?" He pointed at me and said, "You have a choice. You can decide. I know that in tough decisions you can make a hard call. Well, you have to make the call now. Kill hundreds to save billions. You already set this in motion. When you place the phone on the main power junction, you sent a remote bundle of temporal energy into the device's main generator. When this is triggered, it will annihilate the building and everybody in it. It is all controlled by the phone. I had to abandon the phone because the energy it contains is harmful to me now. Yet it still contains great power beyond receiving messages from out of time. Power that I had to entrust to someone. I needed somebody that I could trust to do the right thing. That someone is you. You have to save us and save the world. All you have to do is dial 911, and boom." A genuine smile spread on his tortured features, and it looked the worst by far. I returned his gaze and asked him, "Why not destroy the device and let the people go? Why do they need to die? You cannot know for certain that everybody who works there is corrupt, or would even be able to do any real damage without the device in your research." Instantly, he snarled and responded, "No, I have seen what they can do and what they will do. Even the most mundane of workers, all of them bow to power and tactically endorse the monstrous regime with their inaction. They all have to die. Now make the choice." I had no idea if my message had been heeded or what was the status on people evacuating the building. I saw a lot of vehicles moving about, but still too many there. I couldn't do this, not now. I shook my head and just said, "No, I can't do it, I won't. Not everybody is guilty of what you say they did or what you say they're going to do. You can't know for certain that given another way they would not do better and be better. I will help you destroy the machine, but I won't kill those people." M's thoughtful regard for my response faded into a dour, scrutinizing look that seemed multiplied by the shimmering distortion around his horrible features. "You're making a mistake. They have to die. Quick and painless now, which only you can afford them. Or slow and painful later if I have to hunt them all down like I've been doing, especially for the turncoats who betrayed me and stole my work on Project Echo." I stood my ground and tried to get him to focus on me, but my plan had failed and he saw through the ruse as he looked out and saw people fleeing from the building. "What did you do?" He screamed at me and the crackling distortion around him intensified. I obliged his question. "I warned them. I am not on their side or yours. They can escape and you can destroy the machine and they can't recreate it. At least not as far as we know. So you don't need to kill them. You can still walk away from this. You don't need to keep killing." I watched his response and tried to tell if I had gotten through, but a moment of thoughtfulness was replaced by a snarl of anger and he lashed out again. "It was Sinclair, wasn't it? I should have killed her when I had the chance, but I thought that she would get hers when the building was annihilated. You don't know her like I do. You can't trust her. She'll kill you as soon as you become inconvenient to her, just like she did to me. I was concerned about what he had said about Bianca, but whatever her story, she and the rest of the people there deserved to live. They couldn't all be killed for a crime that they hadn't even committed. I reiterated my intent. I warned them to evacuate. I told her, and she knows about you now. The other directors want you dead, but she's different. She is trying to get people out of there now. Give her time and wait, and I promise that I'll help destroy the device. Just let them go. I saw immediately that he was shaking his head. They cannot be forgiven. I know what's in their hearts and minds. I've seen their actions. People do not change like that. If they are capable of that degree of evil, it's because it's already in them. I wish that you had seen through the lies. I wish that you had put the rest of the world ahead of these liars and monsters. Now I will have to make it right. I will have to stop them permanently. He moved forward towards the ladder, and I stepped in front of him. I can't let you go after them, not anymore. I will not let you keep hunting and killing these people. M paused and looked me up and down and smiled. Are you going to stop me from doing it? We all know how that went last time. I tried to stand firm, but he was right. Whatever energy was fueling him made him nearly immune to damage, and he had beaten the hell out of me last time. I had to do it though. I had to stop him. I planted my feet and held up my hands. Before I could perceive him moving, M was next to me. He grappled me and twisted around in an effortless motion that allowed him to leverage my weight easily. I was promptly hurled off my feet into a heap on the edge of the tower, nearly falling off the edge. I pulled myself back in the nick of time as a stomp leveled at my head and it crushed into the tower's railing. He began pummeling me into the ground just like before. I knew that he wouldn't hold back. He had no more use for me. He was going to kill me. I had one last chance, and I rolled hard to my side as his fist slammed into the area where my head had been. I grabbed the phone from my pocket and gripped it in both hands and punched him with it, and the blow connected. He cried out in pain and surprise. There was an odd distortion of energy upon contact. I considered that maybe the phone did have some strange ability to affect his powers. He struck back and knocked the wind out of me with a punch to the gut. I thought that I heard my ribs breaking. I was running out of options and knew that I might die, so I tried something desperate. I stood up near the edge and held up a hand to taunt him into attacking. He obliged and charged at me, but I held up the phone, dove to the side, and whirled around to catch him unbalanced. I threw the phone at him, and he instinctively caught it, and I leapt forward while he was vulnerable and jumped and drop-kicked him straight off the tower. There was a long, torturous, buzzing scream and then a horrible crunch, and when I looked down, I saw that the phone had disrupted his abilities enough for gravity to finish the job. After coming back to life through time and space, Roland Merrick was once again dead. I slowly descended the tower, my body aching with the effort. I saw the ruined form of Merrick on the ground. The phone was on his chest, and it had survived the fall somehow. I reverently picked it back up and turned it over in my hands. This thing had saved my life, but I still didn't know the full extent of its bizarre abilities. My reverie was disrupted when I saw a car approaching. Bianca and a group of the Foundation's security disembarked. She walked up slowly and gasped when she saw the ruined form of Merrick on the ground. She gingerly stepped around him and spoke to me with a faint smile on her face. "The building has been evacuated, but it looks like you handled it." I nodded grimly but didn't respond. I was too lost in thought. I got in the car with Bianca and we drove away to a safe location. Bianca and I got out of the car and she asked me about what had happened. I told her everything and she was shocked by the outcome, but seemed happy that I was okay. I asked her what she would do next, and she was thoughtful for a moment and told me, "Well, now that Merrick is dead, the Foundation will be more responsible with this technology to ensure this doesn't happen again." My mind wandered back to what he had said about what happens in the future, and I knew there was one more thing that I had to ask her. "What are you going to do with that device? It's clearly not safe and the damage it could do is catastrophic. Maybe we should destroy it." Her smile vanished and she considered her next words and spoke again. "America's created a marvel that can serve us all. With the Foundation's leadership, we can seize the future and give hope to everyone." As I heard the speech, I had finally decided on what I was going to do. I had made my choice. I took the phone out and looked at Bianca and smiled. "Yeah, I heard a story about that once. I think I know the ending. This device, all that seeing the future, getting calls from it and all this mess, it's too dangerous for people to meddle in." Bianca looked confused and tried to reassure me. "Well, you can trust us. Don't worry, we will not make the same mistakes." I looked back in the direction of the facility, now safely evacuated and likely waiting on the orders of Bianca and the board to resume their work. I smiled, looked down at the device in my hand, dialed 911 and hit send. There was a mushroom cloud-sized explosion visible in the car windows behind us, and it rocked the car and nearly sent us off the road. Bianca looked back, horrified at what had happened, and then looked to me with a confused and angry expression. "I know you won't. No one will ever again. Whatever the intentions, no one should hold that power and no one should know the future." After it was all over, I returned home. I faced no reprisal for my action against the Foundation. Maybe they had disbanded after the incident, or maybe they're still working towards a similar end. I don't know, but at this point, I would rather not know anyway. I do not receive the calls anymore on the phone. Both my original and the trans-dimensional phone are finally and truly dead. I was fired from my day job for not showing up thanks to all of my misadventures, so I'm in a tough spot now that it's over. Since I need a new job after all this madness, I figured maybe I'll get a job as a 911 dispatcher. After all, I have some experience on the job. Whatever the case, I'm glad I don't know what will happen anymore. No one should have that burden and no one should be able to alter fate. Take care and stay safe.